shoes and I'm busted. Cotton is down to a quarter of a pound, but I'm busted. I got a cow that went dry and a hen that won't lay. A big stack of bills that gets bigger each day. The county's gonna haul my belongings away 'cause I'm busted. You know, there just seemed to be like an economical analysis. People have immediate needs that Bernie has like he's talked about like, oh, free public food or something. Let's have big towers. I mean, I don't know if he's gotten into specific. Is housing. Where are you gonna live? You know, because property, there's the rich have too much damn money. They can't put it into the stock market, so they have to shovel it into the housing market, and it gets a big bubble. Like we had the 2008 bubble. They purposely built up the bubble. They created as much like in a way they just like created. I don't want to get into this statistic. I mean, you should find out about that because that was like something specifically done by collusively, I would say, by the 1% in order to crash the money, and then they got a big payout, which is like I mean, I've heard numbers like 15 trillion or something, you know, total 17 trillion, or overall cost with the debt and the you know the interest on the debt. So there's much better ways to spend our money. There's much better ways to spend our money, and the fact that you know, they're just not talking about the problem that big businesses captured the basic problem that big businesses captured, you know, government. I mean, they say it's happened, but then they're like, oh, well, trillion doing that. Or so like, yeah, that's what we're doing bit by bit. You know, you got your B in the house. There's a B. You got your New Deal reforms, which were going in the correct direction. And I'm just really pissed off the financial elites, the Rockefellers of the world, some of them, and still got your, yeah. I wish I should do it. Okay.
And right now, most of our best technology is locked up in a corporate jail that can't, you know, like it can't help people. It can't help as many people just.
Yeah, here he's talking about intellectual property and drugs. I mean, that's the biggest technology too. Why can't we have like drugs from? But then you take all the power away from that sector, and they basically, in a way, they're just capturing a natural thing, the work of like the scientists. That's like the means of their production is like people to make the drugs, and then they actually, it's just more, of course, like that's screwed up problem about the system too. It's more focused towards, but then this is just, it's more focused towards sales of the drugs than it is towards useful science into useful drugs. It's more about the money they can make. Obviously, that's why legalized pot is not legal, because they don't want you to make, you know, people to make money that they can't make. How long is that? So, and what he's talking about here too is intellectual, like I was saying, he was talking about the intellectual property thing, which I don't understand all that well, but it basically is the idea that patents, that kind of crap, and like we respect the patents, they respect our patents, which they don't ultimately, and it is an extreme libertarian position to like get rid of intellectual property too. This is like, he's actually like one of the guys that's like one of the most ridiculous YouTubers, the esoteric entity. He's funny. So, who has this agorist philosophy too, where they want to like institute this alternative system. They think they're going to like have an alternative system an alternative money system, and like maybe just, I don't know, start using Bitcoin. But it just seems like, so like, in other words, we'll take all this leftist energy and we'll put it into this real, what I would say is a libertarian far right pipe dream. So to me, there just could be no other. I mean, the fact that he's coming out against just the basic reforms. I mean, is he for those basic, I don't even have to, I'm not going to repeat them because I'm not that good at repeating them, but the basic, reforms that we all know that Bernie Sanders is calling for.
Sure. For example, take the EpiPen, right? The EpiPen, miracle of technology, helps people deal with allergic reactions, saves lives. Well, now the price is through the roof, and a lot of people can't afford it because that's how capitalism works.
And Bernie Sanders, that's how capitalism works. That's how our capitalist system works. That's how our crony capitalist system works, where our government is bought off by. That's why Bernie Sanders is on there talking about universal health care, which is a way to cut the free market out of. So he's proposing a solution to this. And Lee Camp says oh, he doesn't have a solution. Does he? I think this is a solution, right?
So in order to take technology, we have to take
the solution of the EpiPen, yeah, because if you're like Canada, if you have a single payer system, or if you're like the VA, then you could bargain, then you could maybe you could go from one drug company to another and let them actually imagine the free market actually compete in America. Imagine that. But the only way we can have that kind of free market is with regulation, which this type of nonsense is. I'm saying these are far right-wing nutballers, what they're talking about.
Get out of the profit capital ruling everything system. You want to understand how pernicious the system is? Think about this. Even Elizabeth Warren.
Talking about how bad capitalism is, so it sounds great. You're yeah, he's right. He's totally right. Yeah, but now, which obviously Elizabeth Warren has done some questionable things, but now.
And Bernie Sanders have been corrupted by it on certain matters. Bernie Sanders supports the F-35 fighter jet, the most expensive vehicle ever built by humankind. It will cost $1 trillion. The cost of that plane could have fed the world many times over.
I mean, this is kind of a good point, but little Bernie Sanders don't have that much little power on his own. So the idea that he might have tried to slide, he's the amendment king. So the fact that he actually, signed off on something like this maybe it was a mistake. Maybe, that's to say, do you believe the system can be fixed through amendment, through democracy? That's what they're talking about here. They're talking about no democracy. Bernie Sanders is talking about the democratic fix. They're not talking about any kind of. And if you listen to Peter Joseph specifically, he's talking about no demonstrations, no unions, no democracy. Specifically, you go to the Jacques Fresco, the founder of the oh my God, his buddy Jacques Fresco, who he had a big beef with, and they're the name of the Venus Project. So he's another tax dodger who uses his I would say 501c3, the Venus Project, just and that's the easiest way too. I think they can just take a donation and then they'll pay that. They have to pay for services rendered, right? So who are you paying that to then? So you took some donations, say as maybe Patreon. Peter Joseph must have patrons. So I'm sure Lee Camp does, right? I'm not sure if it works like that, but. Of course, he's okay, I'm getting off track now. I'm saying the 501c3, the easy way is they just take the money and then they pay it out to an entity where I can't explain the mechanics of everything this called. Hey, what? Oh, shit. Put that there.
Mountain, they should be rewarded disproportionately against those that don't reach the top of that mountain. This is preposterous from a systems perspective, a true sociological perspective, a true epistemological perspective. Not only is there no level playing field,
This is true.
people are also not equal in their abilities or their biology.
This is true.
And have different strengths and weaknesses.
What?
These are not strengths and weaknesses that are universally assumed. In other words, what seems like a strength or a weakness in one context could very well be the opposite in another context. This propaganda will say that those with weaker strengths, mental or physically, or are just lazy, they deserve less in this sort of socially Darwinistic assumption. And it's a very dangerous assumption. It's a very false assumption. So culture has become obsessed with individual success, so-called success, ignoring the collective reality of our existence. So coming back to Kasparyan's point, people today, more than ever, should be receiving a dividend of society, so to speak.
I cut out Anna.
There's nothing wrong with the idea of people being born into a society that's actually designed to take care of them, building upon the fruits of what prior generations have done. There is no greater means to generate real equality of opportunity than to actually remove the stress of survival. Providing people with the necessities of life is the root of
I just don't get it. I just don't understand it. Okay. It's still bullshit. That's all. You can't make. There's not going to be any more. I mean, that's it. It's nonsense. I mean, please watch the things. Get your opinion. If anyone ever sees this, please leave all kinds of delightful comments, and I'll just ramble on, and I'll do more and more videos. I'm going to do a Isoda because it's a video. All right. Oh shit. Cancel. I get this one now. In the street. Because, like, seriously, I mean, it's just like everything he says is like such freaking nonsense. I mean, he's talking like about the real problem, but then he's like saying, "Oh," he just acts like neoliberalism never happened. He just acts like that New Deal reforms can't be at all. I mean, there's a step by step. It takes a dismantling process, bit by bit, because they put the corporate state. So it's just like all hands on deck, in my opinion. I mean, I guess the one most legitimate guy who I'm gonna check out, who hasn't said much about, like, I think Chomsky definitely said, like, well, you should have everyone, you should vote for the lesser evil, and then of course, no, I'm just rambling. I'm just saying, but yeah, Chris Hedges, I think I was gonna say is the most probably legit, but he might be just a better con man than Peter Joseph, because the Russians are. I'm going to do the next one about RT. How they seem to have a lot of right-wing propaganda for just a regular old news source, and a lot of shady right propaganda that's really seems to have that same purpose as the Russian trolls described in the indictment of the 13, where they would start out and be very pro Bernie Sanders, and then eventually, Bernie's a sellout to the establishment. And that's basically what Lee Camp just said. That Bernie's a big sellout now because he sold out to the military industrial complex. And so his ideas are invaluable, which is like another very weak, sort of in adios.